Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to Books That Make You Better. In this series, we're going to look at books that I think make you better. This is a passion of mine. I'm a professor of construction management, and this has been something I've done for decades, reading these types of books, and I want to share the summaries of some of them so that you can make a determination. Is this a book I want to purchase? Do I think this book will help make me better at what I do? And so today's book is going to be The One Thing. The One Thing by Gary Keller and J. Papasan. Excellent book written a few years back. And it is what the title says, the one thing. What's the one thing that you can really do to improve yourself or to get to where you want to go? And it really is a book about direction, about focus. And so we'll cover off these five topics. What is the one thing? The domino effect, the focusing question, goal setting to the now, the four thieves. So as I've said in the past, I've switched to the iPad in the last few years of my readings. But this book I bought with a hard copy book and have read it probably over the years, maybe about 3 times. It's a book that's worth revisiting. It's not a really thick book. Let's see, how many pages do we got here? How many pages do we have here in this book? We've got around 200 plus pages of reading. So it's a pretty quick read. But nevertheless, it's a quick read, but it sticks with you and it really has an impact, I find. And it pulls together a lot of things from a lot of disciplines, and it's put into very simple terms. And there's some really nice sort of hand-drawn graphics that I think go a long way to explain things, they're the most simple graphics and little drawings that you could imagine. But it just gets right to the point. And so that's what I love about this book. It gets right to the point. And Gary Keller is Keller Williams Realty, one of the world's biggest real estate businesses. And he started that business. So he's been very, very successful. So he knows what he speaks of, which is also important. And these 5 areas, like I said, the one thing, the domino effect, the focusing question, goal setting to the now, and the 4 thieves are just 5 points out of the book. There is a lot of stuff in those 200 pages. It's amazing the amount of material that Keller actually was able to put into this. So what is the one thing? Well, really it's in this age of distraction that we live in. And you know what? When this book was written, I think I'd have to check the date. I think it's around 2014 something. Actually, I think it's around 2010, 2011. We were still talking about multitasking being this great thing. We didn't really see the distractions that are involved with social media and all of these other things that kind of take us off our game. But he saw it. And so I think he was one of the early adopters of the aspect of like Cal Newport's digital minimalism and deep work and those kind of, getting rid of email and all those kind of things. He was one of the early visionaries in that area that said, we get way too distracted with things. We need to focus in on a particular thing. And if you're trying to do 100 things, you're not going to do anything. So go small is ignoring all the things you could do, doing what you should do. Right? So go small is ignoring all the things you could do, doing what you should do. And that point is he's trying to say, all these little things that we're doing that probably have very little positive impact on our overall careers, our overall lives, they take the first priority very often with many of us. And when those things are taking priority, you're not really getting where you want to go, and you're not getting that feeling of being purposeful about what you're doing. So extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. He's big on goal setting and he's big on systems. And I've talked about this in the past. I don't really buy totally some authors. They'll say, well, it's goals or it's systems. They're not mutually exclusive. You work them collaboratively. And most authors that say it's not goals, eventually, if you really ask them, well, what are you working towards? They'll say this thing. Well, that's the goal, right? They just try to downplay it. I think it gets some media attention in that way. But extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. That ties to things we've talked about in previous videos as well. SMART goals, being very specific, making it measurable, all those other elements of developing your goals. And he kind of frames things early on in the book with the domino effect. And it's really sort of the power of compounding going on. How when something starts and you start to get momentum, it can really build towards what you're trying to achieve. And a big part of the book is understanding where you want to go and then understanding what do you need to do right now to get there. And as you start going down that path, that journey to where you're trying to end, that is going to build momentum. That is going to help you to get where you need to go. So everything in the book is very well researched. He'll bring in some theory about dominoes, and when one domino falls, it increases its energy to the next domino, so it can actually topple a larger domino, a domino that's up to 50% larger than the previous one. And you start looking at that order of magnitude as you go, you're getting a lot of drive, a lot of energy, a lot of results from that effort. And so really understanding that and understanding where you want to go, the one thing, is important. Like I said, he's got some very simple sort of metaphors and concepts that's easy to remember and easy to apply in that sense. But it does take effort, obviously. The focusing question. So this is pretty important as well. And questions, I talk about that in a number of my other videos too. Asking good questions is really important. But if we're talking about the one thing, Keller says the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So if we know what that one thing I can do that's going to make things better, hence the books that makes me better, that's why we're doing this book here, it makes a lot of sense. And so when you're about to do something, is this going to have that kind of impact? If not, it's probably shouldn't be on your priority. If you're trying to go in a certain direction, you need to do that. And so what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And we'll talk about that. Goal setting to the now. So goal setting to the now. He breaks this down really well too. And I put up this sort of diagram here, and this is actually from the last planner system in scheduling, which is part of lean construction methodology. And as I said, I'm a construction management professor, and I can't help but draw the parallels between lean last planner scheduling and how he breaks goal setting to the now. So you've got the someday goal. That's the long term, the vision, the distant goal that you're trying to achieve. You've got, and that could be like 10 years out, that could be like where you want to be in 15 years, etc. Could be shorter too. The 5-year goal, the 1-year goal, the monthly goal, the weekly goal, the daily goal right now. These are going towards that. So are these things that are bringing you closer to this, or are these things that are bringing you further away? Well, if they're bringing you further away, they shouldn't be what you're doing right now. If they're bringing you closer, then that's helpful. He's also one of the first authors that I've seen that started really doing time blocking and trying to plan your week out so that you've got certain sections that are dedicated to your one thing. And you can have your one thing for business, your one thing for health, your one thing for family. Not just one thing, period, but in different areas of your life that you put a priority on and that feel are important to you. Your health. It spends a fair deal of the book talking about health and meditation and the advantages and all of these aspects of your health, getting proper sleep, eating properly. So these are all working together. This is almost like I said, like lean construction. short-term and long-term planning. You have your overall project schedule. Maybe it's a 2-year project. Maybe it's a 4-year project. Construction projects sometimes are big. Where are your milestones? Breaking it down, right? So breaking it down into smaller components. Then looking at it in this one here might be 2 years, let's say. This one here might be 4 months. This one here is 6 weeks. And then we got weekly, and then we've got daily, what we should make sure that's happening on a daily basis. So the right now, the daily goal, the weekly goal, the monthly, the yearly, very much that way. And I think if you think in those terms, how a lot of these books work, and you think about application in the real world. I'm using a construction example here with Lean Last Planner systems. You could be in the IT world, you could be in the finance world, but we all have projects. We all have things that we want to accomplish, and we break them down into the smallest elements. And you start, as Stephen Covey in another book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People would say, you start with the end in mind, you work your way backwards. You start with the end in mind, as Keller does here, and you work your way backwards to what you should be doing right now. If you don't know what you should be doing in the longer term, then that's right now, you're just doing anything. You're kind of like wayward. You're kind of like adrift in the ocean. Where it takes you, it's going to take you. But if you do have your sights on achieving and accomplishing certain things in the long term, then you're breaking it down into the components and the smallest components of what you should be doing now. And time blocking for that so that you make sure that you work towards that. This book goes through that in a lot of detail. Even ties a lot of elements to habit formation. It's written well before Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it has a lot of elements there. And we'll do another session on Atomic Habits in the future as well, because it's an excellent book. And it has some things that are a little different than this for sure, but it really gives you a good sense of how you need to organize yourself is the one thing. And the 4 thieves of productivity. The things that take away from you being successful at what you want to do. So the inability to say no. If you're saying yes to everything, then you're not really doing the right things, right? As soon as you say yes to something, it means something else is not going to happen. You're not keeping up with your commitment of the other thing. Or you're stressing yourself out. You're putting yourself in a bit of chaos. You're ready to burn yourself out. Those types of things. So the inability to say no is, again, something that you have to develop, that you can now say no, that you have the ability to say no. Reminds me of a mentor that I had at one time. He had over his desk, cut out of wood, 2 letters, no. And somebody would come in the office and say, oh, I need this, 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 this. And he'd point to the sign. Because he was not going to let somebody else's sense of urgency become his sense of urgency, take him off the rails of what he was trying to accomplish. And this happens to us day in and day out. Somebody else has something that's not important and not urgent for us, but they need it right away. And all of a sudden it's becoming our problem because they didn't manage their time effectively. So the inability to say no is a problem. Learn to say no to the right things and do the one thing that you've determined is the most important for you. Fear of chaos, you don't want to have chaos. That definitely, as I said, you're taking on other things from other people that can cloud your mind with all of those elements. Poor health habits. Well, it's hard to focus if you can't focus. You haven't slept well. You haven't eaten well, you don't exercise and take care of yourself. That's one of the issues too. You got to be at the top of your physical game so that you can get the things done that you need to do. And so having good health habits is important. Environment doesn't support your goals. Where are you doing this? Where are you planning to, if you're planning to focus in on do some steady work and you're going to be in a place where you're going to be constantly interrupted or distracted, or you have an iPad, that constantly distracts you or whatever it may be, then your environment's not supporting your goals. Make sure that you're setting yourself up to succeed. So those were the 4 thieves of productivity. He talks about the entrepreneurial approach versus the purposeful approach. He breaks it down, the entrepreneurial approach, doing what comes naturally. So in other words, you're just doing because this is coming naturally. It's easy for you. Very often, though, and it kind of ties to Carol Dweck's work in mindset. If you have kind of a fixed mindset, sometimes you're doing what seems easy until you hit a wall, and then usually you reach disappointment or resignation, or you try something different because you've hit the ceiling of your natural ability, of that interest level. And then you kind of keep bouncing around, but you keep hitting this ceiling. It's hard for you to be hyper or super successful when you let the ceiling stop you in your tracks. The purposeful approach, doing what comes unnaturally, meaning that, these are the things that come easy. These are the things that come a little bit more difficult. Nobody said focus was easy. You have to get rid of the distraction. You have to be in the environment that you need that is conducive to that. You have to be able to be alert. You have to build the brain power that you're not used to, that adrenaline flow every time that you're looking around and you're not focused on one thing. So doing what comes unnaturally, focus, big, models and systems. So just like I was just showing you a couple of slides ago, developing a model that you can break down, that you can follow, and it's part of a system. So a model is something that when you do it enough times, when you get into it, you have a vision of how you should move towards this. You have a framework that you can follow. And the one thing is about developing that framework, the models and the systems. So see, this is where Keller does an excellent job of tying together models, systems, and goals. And that's one of the things I like about this book, is how they bring that together. And that doing those things in a very focused manner will help you to break through that ceiling, as Keller discusses in the book. The path of mastering something is the combination of not only doing the best you can do at it, but also doing it the best it can be done. All about not settling. All about developing goals that are a stretch, that aren't too easy, that push you to your limits so that you can continuously improve to get there. That is a purposeful approach to trying to achieve those goals. So the one thing is about having a purposeful approach to achieving your overall goals. And I think it really gets you to think. There's no book that I agree 100% with, but this book has a lot of really valuable information. The one thing, references, I'll place this in the show descriptions. And please click the subscribe button and the bell so that you'll be notified of new updates. I have a lot of these types of videos on my YouTube channel, as well as construction related and project management related videos. I hope you really enjoyed this. I would also look at the One Thing website, very, very thorough, lots of free information, and the One Thing podcast on iTunes, where they really dive deep. They have lots of guests that they have, so it's a very good web podcast to listen to. But I would start with the book. I think it'll give you a really leg up on setting goals and focusing, something that is so difficult to do these days with all of the distractions. So I'm Tom Stevenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time at Books That Make You Better. Bye for now.